Hey everybody, it's Steve with Scott194, and I appreciate you taking the time to stop by to visit and check out my video. And we are doing another pros and cons. And today I'm doing the pros and cons on the Audi R8 Evo. Um, a great car, and so let's go ahead and just jump right into it. But before I do, again, these are just my opinions and my experiences. Um, driving the car and setting it up and things like that. And of course, just like everything, opinions vary. So, but let's get started. Of course, we are at Silverstone here, and the reason being is I did a multiplayer race with the Audi, kind of trying to do the same thing, and really wasn't a fail, but it just struggled with the car. And if you really want to see the race, I'm sure if you go to Black Eye Racing, his channel, he'll show it. He finished great. I think he finished third, and he had great pace. And there were some really fast guys in there. I finished fourth, but I even struggled to do that, and just didn't have the handle on the car, and should have done a lot better. Just didn't even have good pace. So I came back to Silverstone, unhappy with my performance, and did some more work. Now I drove the car a lot of other places also. So I drove the car a lot of other places, a lot of other tracks. Just seeing how, just kind of refreshing my brain as far as how it drives at some of the other places and times and things like that. And then at Silverstone, I redid some more work on the setup to get it to perform like I wanted it to. And of course, then I just did the short race here with the AI, and of course it's at 100. And it performed much better. So I will leave the link to this setup in the description, and I will also show the setup here in this video for the people that like it that way. But it's much better than what it was when I did the multiplayer race. And I did finish fourth, and it was an okay race in the beginning, but it was pretty much, for me, it was pretty much a yawner after that, just because I was kind of by myself just driving around in laps. So, but let's get started with the pros and cons. And of course, I'll start with the cons first. The amount of adjustments. The Audi is just the way its adjustments, like the sway bar, the wing, things like that. It's, you only got like 5 positions on the wing and 4 on the sway bar and things like that. So when you make an adjustment, it's a big adjustment. So sometimes you're flipping and flopping. That's the way I call it. I mean, you go from the car being, not stiff enough to too stiff, or not enough downforce to too much downforce. It's so easy to, since you can't make smaller increments, it's really hard to sometimes find that sweet spot, and that's because of just the adjustments. And again, the operation, the aggressive setups are a hit and a miss. So the aggressive setups that come with the game, some of them are pretty good. I mean, some of them are pretty good, and I'd say most of them are pretty good. But there are a few in there that you get, and that's also because the car is a little more difficult on the to drive side. Is a little bit, they're off to where they're just, the car is very hard to handle and really isn't driver friendly. So again, with the aggressive setups, it's more of a hit and miss. The fuel mileage. Fuel mileage is definitely a con. The R8 doesn't get the greatest mileage. Got that big V10 in it, and some tracks, if you have an hour-long race, you are pushing to make it. I know that you can make some of them, like Silverstone. I ran the calculations here, and it should be able to, the pace I was going, I should be able to run. I could have ran an hour, but again, it wasn't like I had a whole bunch of fuel left over. So you really are right up to the limit is about an hour. So where some, like I talked about, the Aston Martin could go over with no ease. This could, you're just doing good to get to that hour. So again, that's a con. And the rear end of the car is another con. It's again, and that kind of goes with the adjustments. It's you're either one side or the other. You either have the car to where it won't turn and help the car rotate, or it's sliding all over the place. So it's really hard. You keep flipping and flopping back and forth. So that's really sometimes it gets discouraging, and you end up spending a lot more time just because you cannot get the rear end of the car to do what you want it to do. So if you can tame that, you're ahead of the game. So those are the cons. Let's get into the pros. The pros: the car is very good in braking, very stable, and very, as far as out braking another car, it's probably, again, in the top half of the field as far as the braking performance of the car. Changes direction. It changes direction really well. So I mean, any kind of tracks that have chicanes, those anything like that, going through just like the S's here at Silverstone, or even let's say the S's at Suzuka. Again, really good because the car changes directions very easy. And that kind of goes with the short wheelbase. I mean, the car is a shorter wheelbase car, so it's going to track a little better like that. So I'm gonna go ahead and change the. There we go. Just change that so you don't get tired of looking at that. What's next? The performance. The car, if you are in conditions that the setup is working really well, whatever track you're at, then if you got the setup correct, the Audi is definitely one of the fastest cars. I mean, it's as far as all-out performance, it's probably in the top 3 of the fastest cars. Just because it's got so much potential. You got the V10, you got a short wheelbase, and all those things. It really works well. It's got a really good stiff chassis. It's not flexing all over the place, so it really works well. It's getting to that point of getting that sweet spot. So if if you're at even if you're at a track that the car really favors, but maybe the conditions aren't are difficult or something like that, then you might still have a harder time. But if you're in that sweet spot, or the temperatures are different, that you're having a hard time getting it, chasing the track, so to speak, yeah, you might have a difficult time. But if you hit it right, you're definitely going to be up near the front because the car's got great performance. The front end feel of the car has super awesome front end feel. I mean, you can feel everything it does. You can get on the fuel early, and the car will still rotate. Setting up the front end is not a problem. Usually it'll tell you, just like when I was doing the multiplayer and the car wasn't working, I knew right away. As soon as the tires started the first few laps, I could tell that the tires, it was just, the car was sliding around and it was not gripping the track. And it pretty much communicates to you whether it likes it or not really pretty quick. And I like that. So I mean, the rear end is the one that's the harder one to figure out, but the front end is the opposite. It's really good. It also, another great pro is it holds its own on the straightaways. So I mean, I'm not going to say it's up the top of the fastest on the speed charts, but I know it's in the top half of the field. It's definitely, and I'm talking straightaways in general. So I mean, that's whether you're on like this straightaway here at Silverstone or Barcelona, or some of the other places. The straightaway speed is usually right there. Misano. I went to Misano, and down that back straightaway there, it was right with the top speeds that I usually can put in, from another car. So it's right there. It's not lacking any top speed. Some of the key setup points: find a balance that you can drive. Find it that you can live with it, as far as whether it might be a little too loose or maybe a little understeery. But try to find something that you can live with and still perform the way you want to, because again, you might be in that situation with this car, just the way it's setting up. It might be on one side or the other, not just right where you want it. Be easy on the wing. It's another car where that's the mistake I made at Silverstone. I put a little bit too much wing in it, and it just seemed to affect it more. It made it just want to do more, basically understeer the car, and so I took a pretty good amount of wing out of the car, and it's doing a lot better in this race. And so I think it really helps with the balance of the car, and it just doesn't need a lot of wing to do that. So again, just be careful on how much you put in it. Also, the air ducts. You want the air ducts for the braking, for the brakes and tires to be equal. I mean, usually, 3-3 or 4-4, just because this car is a little harder on the rear tires than the front. Unlike most other cars, a lot of times they have, especially the front engine cars, they're harder on the front tires. But with the mid-engine, especially the Audi here, it's harder on the rear tires. So you're usually going to get the rear tires wearing a little faster than the fronts. So you definitely want to keep them cool. And don't be afraid to add TC. If you need to add, if you're, let's say, setting it up and maybe it's a little bit too loose than what you want, but if you go anything else, it's going to make the car understeer or something like that. Maybe just until you can get some of the fuel off the car, maybe just add, another click of traction control or something just to get you by, maybe. Or after the tires have gone down, basically off their qualifying rubber, and you're in more of the race part of the rubber of the tire, and you need to turn the traction control up, just turn it up one notch, and just to help you out a little bit. But I mean, it makes a big difference, and as far as performance, and also just trying to be consistent with the car. And that's the biggest thing. I mean, trying to, and that's a lot with driver, but some cars are more prevalent to being consistent than others, and unfortunately this car takes a really good driver to be consistent with it. Just honorable mentions. Obviously the sound is awesome. I know that's basically, everybody's got their own opinion on that, but I think I love the sound of this car. Of course, it's the same engine. It's in the Lamborghini Huracan. They both share the same engine, and they just sound just awesome. So I love that. Also in ACC, it's probably one of the cars that has the most liveries, and it's just, this is one of my favorites out of this one here. But there's so many other ones that are awesome, just awesome looking liveries for the Audi Evo. And of course, obviously with the sound, the downshifts also. I just love the way you're downshifting, the sound of it, and the popping and all that. It just, like I said, it really adds to the experience, of driving. Especially if you're in a longer race. But it's so enjoyable to listen to it. But those are my pros and cons, and we can go and look at the setup. So everybody that likes to take it down that way can look that way, and I can also look at my timetables, and I can show you those from the race. I finished 5th, so I stayed right here. I was pressuring the BMW all the way through, but I basically stayed 5th place, which it was a good race. I mean, I had a really good time doing it. It was still fun, and well, let's go back to here and show the timetables. And I didn't have any outs, and you see they're all 159s, and that's better than I did with the multiplayer. I mean, obviously it was a 45-minute race, but I mean, even then I struggled, as far as the times. And these are, I mean, you can see the 49, 59, 54. I mean, they're all right there. So this setup works with the car much better than the one I had for the multiplayer. I was pretty disappointed in myself as far as the setup I put on the car, because the car was a lot better than I showed. And of course, he had some really, Black Eye is, I give a lot of respect to him. He's definitely, fast, But and you had some other guys that were really fast that were first and second, and you can't give away anything. So that's why I just showed this race here instead of the other one. Even though I finished fourth, it was pretty much, for me, it was pretty much a yawner. Let's go over the setup. The left side, I got 26.1 for the tires. Right side's 27. The toe is negative -0.7 on the front, negative -0.07, I should say. I'm sorry. Camber is negative 3.4. Caster is 13.1 on the front. The toe on the rear is 0.12 with the camber at negative 2.6. Electronics, I had it at 3 and 5. Fuel, 62 liters with the #1 brake pads. I had the mechanical grip. I have any roll bar at 4. The brake bias I have at 60. Steering ratio turned all the way down. The springs on the front are 174,000 with the bump stop rate at 1100 and the bump stop range at 1. And on the rear, the springs are 173,000 with a bump stop rate of 600 and a bump stop range of 8. The any roll bar is 2 and the preload on the diff is 110. The shocks on the car on the front were 19, 15, 27, and 25, and on the rear they're 17, 12, 25, and 22. Aero, I had at 56 in the front and 57 in the rear, with a 2 rear wing and a 3 and a 3 on the brake ducts. Which a lot of times if it's hotter, I run 4 and 4, but still, I mean, it's usually 3 and 3 or 4 and 4, something like that. And the front aero variation was a negative -0.2, and the car was handling really well. So if you'd like to try that, any feedback or comments would be great. I will leave a link in the description for anybody that wants it that way. And any feedback or comments, I really do appreciate, and just want to say thank you. I mean, if you all like this or not, again, I'll be trying to do these so often, every so often. If you all like them, and just trying to really thoroughly, I drive them at different tracks to really get a good judgment of what the car does and what it doesn't do. Again, the Audi, at every track, which I should have said earlier, I really can't think of a weak track. I mean, really, the track, every track you go to with the Audi, it's going to be competitive. It's really just getting the car set up the way you want to. I really can't think of any place it's not going to be competitive. If the car's set up right, it's going to be competitive. So, I mean, there's just no question. I mean, I think Zolder is a place that the car is super awesome there at Zolder. Again, tight track, a lot of tight turns, a lot of changing directions. I think Suzuka is a really great track for it. Because you got the S's and you got some technical sections and that real tight hairpin right there. I know Kalami's really good for it. Those are probably the stronger tracks, but and I think Barcelona should be really good for it also because it's got a little of everything. So, but I mean, really anywhere, even if you took it to Monza or you took it to Spa, it should be really good at Spa. I mean, any other tracks, it still should be really competitive. It's just getting it set up so it'll work correctly. But I hope that sure helps. Helps everybody. Hope everybody gets an idea about the car. And any questions, I'll do the best I can to get back to you. And any feedback on the video really helps me with future videos. And I sure appreciate it. Please hit the thumbs up and subscribe. It really does help the channel. It really does. And please hit the bell. A lot of people either, I don't know if YouTube messed something up with the bell or they, it canceled it out. But hit the bell. A lot of people have told me they don't get the videos, the new ones that have come out, and didn't know I was had videos that were coming out. So please hit the bell so it notifies you of when a new video comes out, so that way you don't miss it. And I sure appreciate it, and I sure hope you come back and visit real soon. Y'all take care. See ya.